Hello, welcome to the Missionary Disciple Podcast. I'm your host for today, Holly, and I'm joined with Andre Renier, our founder, and fellow missionary, Eric Myatt. And we're here today to cover the art of asking good questions. So if you've been journeying with us, our podcast is around equipping missionaries in skills and attitudes as they go out and minister to those in their midst. And this art, this ability, is really central because we talk all the time about one person at a time, meeting people where they're at, and taking leadership and initiative to seize opportunities in conversations. And we're kind of we're convinced, but then we end up somewhere we go, okay, but how do I actually grab those opportunities? How do I navigate them delicately? Because it is such a sacred ground of the other in intentional accompaniment. Mm-hmm. So it's with this reverence and initiative that we're like, how do I navigate that? So, to start us off, Andre, why don't you share a little bit about why this matters? Why does it matter to ask good questions?
Well, it's the most important. We all, the people that are watching this podcast, we're wanting to have an impact on or have influence, have good conversation, leading people back to the church or back to Jesus. This is what our desire is as missionaries. Maybe it's our children or, a parish priest wanting to have a conversation. An example that I often bring up is I had a conversation with a parish priest who he was at a coffee shop and met up with this couple. This couple happened to be sitting beside him, and they got into conversation. He said he was a priest. As soon as he said he was a priest, one of the husband said, well, my mother is a spiritual one in the family. And the priest felt like the conversation was shut down there, meaning they didn't give any access. But I would say that there's an open door there. And the father said, what should I have done in order to keep that conversation going? But I didn't even know. He became instantly paralyzed. I think we want to be missionary, but we don't know how to kind of initiate it. It's really good conversations, and conversations are led by good questions on my part. Really, really important. Activating questions. I think this is what we're going to talk about today. How do you ask good questions?
And identifying opportunity, because you kind of just said he felt that door was closed, but we're asking for a paradigm shift that's actually an invitation to press in and to seek more.
Yeah, and so this is why I'm really excited about this conversation, because it's really intimidating to enter into that space, but it happens and can happen on the daily, like somebody you run into at a coffee shop, like you say, or somebody on the bus, or at mass. After mass, you're just chatting with some people that you maybe know a little bit, but things can come up, a conversation can start, and how do we navigate that? How do we ask a good question that leads to a spiritual conversation? Because it can go so many places. It can go in helping to bring this person closer to Jesus. It can help them realize, okay, how can I reach somebody else in my life? And we can help navigate and be intentional about the questions we ask to help bring them there. So it's just so practical. This is where the rubber hits the road in terms of spiritual conversations, and it has a lot to do around what kind of questions we ask that allow that person to get into there.
A lot of people, at least what I'm hearing, is they are really uncomfortable with asking questions, leading the conversation. They feel like, I'm invasive. My questions are kind of, putting them, under the spotlight, So we avoid it. We kind of keep surface. We have a kind of a simple kind of a conversation just talking about the weather, where we have a great opportunity to actually go somewhere with the conversation. And that's our heart's desire, is we want this person that's kind of not interested in faith, and we'd love them to be interested, but we talk to them about football forever and ever, hoping someday, they'll trip over the football.
But let's talk about that, because I think what's missing, because we would say, okay, so we have an army of willing missionaries who desire to have these conversations. So what's going on then if these conversations aren't happening? And I think let's draw out some of those obstacles or some of those assumptions. So you just mentioned one. You said, well, people think they don't want that. That was a closed door. That statement was a closed door. So we might be assuming, people don't want to talk about spiritual things. So that might be an assumption that we're making that's activating the turning off in us. What are some assumptions you think are out there?
The most important thing that we have to understand is that, one, people are created to be in relationship with God. I mean, everyone hungers for, I think it's St. Augustine said, our hearts are restless till they rest in thee. So we need to understand that we're actually talking to people that were created to enter into this conversation that
Be
we're
convinced of that
yeah.
truth. Yeah.
But at the same time, even just humanly speaking, the psychology of the human person is every person actually wants. The studies show every single person wants to talk about themselves. They want to actually let the world know what they feel about something. They might be uncomfortable or have never had those opportunities or don't know how, but they actually it's human nature to want to talk about yourself. So we have an opportunity to, by our questions, to bring that out.
Yeah. To make that connection.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so people actually are saying want to have that conversation.
They do.
But it's that little almost barrier of awkwardness, and we've been there, and I've sidestepped even going to that conversation because of that little barrier. Like after mass or whatever, you talk to somebody. Oh, how are you doing? You go, chat with them for a bit. But there's like, hey, what'd you think of Father's homily today? Like getting to that moment.
Even that you ask that question, like people go, well, unless they bring up the homily, I'm not going to bring up the homily, but taking that initiative, like even just right there, you could have just said, have a good Sunday, but you said, what'd you think of the homily?
Yeah,
That's
because
provocative.
it's intimidating. I think is what we're saying. Is
Invasive.
that there's a
So it seems like it's
So
invasive.
how do you curb that a little bit? Like, how do you actually not make it sound like you're interrogating somebody or interviewing them or like you have an agenda kind of thing? Because that would be a big kind of obstacle to even going there with somebody or even asking a simple innocent question that wouldn't actually be super intense or intimidating.
Well, actually, I think we have to understand, and the psychology, the studies show that actually by asking questions rather than telling somebody what they should do or they shouldn't be doing, because we're doing that, we're saying, in the homily, Father might have said something that he has to do, or even witnessing the way these people are living their lives. Already, they're feeling judgment or walls are being built up. And so they're already in a place of uncomfortableness, or they might be intrigued by what they're hearing. By asking questions, we're actually releasing that. We're releasing that tension or bringing down that wall. So in a way, we're doing them a favor. Here's an example. A parent wants his son or daughter to go to youth group, okay? And usually we say, you need to go to youth group, or tonight's youth group. As soon as we say you need to go to youth group or tonight's youth group, what's happening internally with our sons and daughters is they're building up walls. They're actually reacting rather than thinking and reflecting. So they're reacting. I don't want to go. Have you ever heard that? So what happens is that when people go experience spiritual things or they read a book or whatever it might be, already they're responding. They're reacting. Anger, frustration, or confusion. What we're trying to do is navigate that.
But in navigating that, I guess like something I'm noticing that you're doing is like you're giving perspective to what matters versus like what can be reduced. Like how can we give perspective? So there's probably going to be resistance, there's probably going to be defensivity, but we don't take that as signs to stop the conversation. We can shrink those. Those can become manageable if we believe about the opportunity is like connecting and identifying. So you said like they're created for this relationship with God. They desire to be seen. It's a basic human need. We're made to be like seen and known. So convincing ourselves as missionaries, as messengers, that that's the reality. When you're looking at your daughter, you're like, hey, but I'm going to help her feel seen, and I'm going to wait. There's going to be an emotion, and then I'm going to identify that. Like that helps give perspective to keep going in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, one principle, again, the studies show this, is that actually when we ask a question with the right disposition, and we're asking it with a sense or an authenticity that actually I want to listen and hear and understand. As soon as we do that, what's happening inside, chemically inside of your body, is that you're no longer reacting, but you become reflective. So a question actually releases something in your body to become, now you're, okay, how do I feel about that? Because I feel something about that. So when someone went to homily, for example, or my kid wants to go, they don't want to go to youth group, they're feeling something after the homily. My job is actually to help them not just feel a reaction, but reflect on something.
On why?
Yeah, come back to the youth group example. Son tonight's youth group, and I don't want to go to that. What are you saying? What do you suggest is
Well, the first thing is
reaction?
I have to empathize with them, meaning I have to kind of, be on their side. So the first thing I need to do is say, so what you're saying is you don't want, and I understand you don't want to go to youth group. I understand that because it's difficult and you feel uncomfortable. I understand that. As soon as we do that, as soon as we empathize with them, what happens chemically in their body is the studies show that there's actually a connection they have with us. Human nature, and I've been reading about this, is it always wants to connect with the other person. Okay, but we're just social beings, and so by me empathizing, what's happening is actually there's a connection that is taking place. And so what I do, the first thing I do with my son is I say, I understand.
So you're saying right away it becomes not a fight, you're coming alongside sort of thing.
Exactly.
I get where you're looking, and I'm not opposed to you as a person. I'm looking to make a connection. Say, so I
Exactly.
totally get it. I get it's tough to go to youth group. So then what?
Well, thank you for a leading question there. But what I would do is now I invite them. I'm empathizing with them, but then now I'm ask a question. I say, why do you think mom and dad want you to go? Now, as soon as I ask that question, rather than, and we do it all the time, mom and dad want you to go. It's important. We went to youth group or whatever, and you got the battle, the wall comes up. But as soon as I say I ask a question, why do you think, not mom and dad want you, but why do you think? Now, again, what's happening internally is that they're not reacting, but they're reflecting. They're actually, okay, I'm inviting them to go inside and go, okay, why do you think mom and dad want me to go? And the studies show that actually people go there. By me asking the question, what happens is that I actually go there. I become self-reflective rather than reacting.
So they become aware almost more of what the dynamic.
Exactly.
I've heard people say, to increase awareness, you ask a good question like a coach. Traditionally you say, keep your eye on the ball, like in baseball. Keep your eye on the ball, when you're at the plate, ready to hit it, which is sort of obvious. You kind of have to. But I've heard other people ask a question, which direction is the ball spinning?
That's exactly.
And inherently, it creates a greater, if not explicit awareness, a desire to know even more deeply kind of what's happening. So there's a self-reflection. Anyway, it sounds similar. Like, we want you to go, so you're telling the person what to do. No, we're actually increasing the awareness. Yeah, why is it important that I go? Why would you want me to go?
I mean, jump in, Holly. I know this is your kind of, you're really good at this, but I'll tell you, you think every movie you watch or you go to a baseball game, that's exactly what the parents are doing. And I think that's exactly what the church is doing constantly is keep your eye on the ball. We're telling people what they should be doing and not doing. But rather, we should be saying, which way is the ball spinning? Then, as St. Augustine said, a Christian life has to be a self-reflected life. The Confessions were all about self-reflection. And so we're just inviting them actually to think through in a rational way. That's another really important thing. When we empathize with somebody and we kind of enter into their world, we move chemically. We invite people to actually have rational thought rather than reactionary.
So we would see this a lot, like on, you're talking about the invitation and then reactions, and I'm imagining scenarios that are so relatable to like our viewers, whether campus or in parish who are leading studies. So our material, the Discovery Faith Study, and all the faith studies are kind of set up to have like a first and then a second question. They're a bit layered. Like, so what do you think of Jesus' lordship? What does it matter if he's Lord? Or, like we're trying to kind of create safe places for people to process in the small group, but also, we've talked about prophetic listening and intentional accompaniment, that the leader needs to be watchful. Like Eric's saying, like, how is this person reacting to this talk that we're having, or this truth that we're trying to share, and how can they navigate based on the reaction? So we're united that we want them to understand Jesus' lordship. And then in Discovery Lesson 3, that's what it's about. Discovery Lesson 4 is the bridge. So it really matters that we spend time on his divinity, because if he's not Lord, then what does it matter? So we're aware of that people are probably going to react and they're probably going to have questions, but it's not the reaction that is the obstacle. It's like it's the source of the spin. Like I like how you said that. It's I go, okay, wow, they're wrestling with that. But if I'm aware and armed, I actually respond a lot differently. I have generosity. I have patience to come alongside and say, yeah, that's hard to grab onto that.
Yeah.
Like, right?
I even get it. Like where my mind's going is the invitation to somebody that I know to like a faith study or a program at my church, because that's an intimidating thing to say. Hey, you want to come to a faith study that I'm leading, or do you want to come to this program at my church? And there'd be, well, I'm not too sure, but to take the strategy you're saying, and I've done it, like, I get it, like pretty churchy, right? Like, hey, come
Diffuse.
to the church hall on a Thursday night. Like I get it. What I found is that we don't have an occasion to talk about like the big things in life.
There you go.
And this has really helped me to do that. So I get it's like super churchy, and like this would not be something that I would have done, 5 or 6 years ago. But I wanted to invite you because I really appreciate it. I thought maybe you would too.
Like empathy,
So you're coming
honesty,
around,
connection.
you're coming around the
like,
side, sort of. Not the side. It sounds
You're coming.
greasy.
Actually, no,
it's-
you're actually approaching it head on. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're going right to who they are. You're not playing games with them. Actually, I think by shutting down, you're actually playing games. Oh, I'm not going to tell them what I think and why I've asked.
What do you mean? Like if you're inviting somebody and they
Yeah,
say, "No,
and-
I'm not really interested." You
Okay,
say,
no problem. You're playing games. You're playing chicken. That's what you're doing. You're not really, talking to them honestly about how they feel about it and how I feel about it. So it's actually dishonest. And you're leaving there kind of feeling judgy towards them because they said no. But here's a really important, so asking questions is really important. But we have kind of that first question. We call it survey, get the lay of the land. But then the Zoom is going a little deeper. We always use the imagery of, you have windows in a house and which window are they going to allow us to go into their very being? Well, you know what the psychology says about this is that that people have external reactions to something. Okay? No. I don't want to go, or I'm not interested, or my mom is a religious one, okay? But really, what is going on is what is the internal movement that's happening inside. It's a whole different story that's going on. Our job is not to be intimidated, like you said, by the external reaction. But we always do. No? Oh, okay, and you were crushed. Or my mother is the religious one. And he said the conversation is shut down. Actually, I think the conversation, he's given me a window, and his window is his mother. The normal way to go is, well, how about you? Do you go to church? Why don't you go to church? He's never invited us into that window. So it's kind of like we've broken entry. We've kind of dishonored the kind of conversation. But the next question to, my mother's a religious one. I go, tell me about your mother's faith. Because you know what? We might find that he loves his mother, he's always honored his mother, and he's always wanted the faith his mother's had. That might be it.
Totally. And I think what you're identifying here, and like just to draw it out, is that as we begin visiting with people, whether it's that initial conversation at Mass or someone like stranger to like even someone I'm leading in the faith study to someone I really want to come on a spring break mission with, like as we're asking questions and having conversations, there will be pieces that the Holy Spirit reveals to us as important. And as go into that for a little bit, and that window example that you gave, if you want to check out our prophetic listening episodes, we talk a little bit more about what that means, but really that these are invitations, and armed with that confidence that this person is created for relationship and really desires to be seen is kind of the only armor that I put on to press on in that conversation. I cling to those truths, and that's what helps us say, talk to me about your mother. Like, yeah, where'd you grow up and what parish did you guys go to? What was that like? Like you can take that invitation and go. And Eric, he gave a great example. They might not actually say something that looks like an invitation, but the no is like a predictable invitation, like the no to the faith study, the no to going on a mission. We can already anticipate there's probably just going to be a no with that I'm busy. So he's armed with, I remember what it felt like to not know about this opportunity. And I'm in a non-judgmental way going to open up how I used to feel about that. It's kind of like these mini testimonies in our back pocket. And that is that's like a different way of mirroring an invitation and saying, hey, so yeah, for me, I was this way. What do you think of that now that I've shared this? It's another,
Yeah.
it's a second layer to go to.
Yeah, and it's being relevant,
Relevant.
and asking a question that's meaningful to the person, and like Jesus was the master at good questions. Like he asked things that are so relevant. What did you come out to see? What do you want me to do for you? Do you believe I can make you well? It was massively relevant. But even him, like he's saying things that are a first stage question, then a second stage question. Who are people kind of saying I am? So it's like a bit objective, a bit other.
But he's inviting them to reflect. That's exactly
So
what
they're
he's doing.
saying who do people say they am? They say, oh, people say you're this person. They say so who do you think I am? So it's why do you think people don't go to church? So what do you mean by that? Why don't you go to church? Or so he's the master at asking questions, making it relevant, like not weird or awkward, but meeting people where they are, asking a good question that's going to lead them somewhere, accompany them towards himself. In his case,
Well,
we want others
yeah.
to come towards him.
I think a key thing, an example you used is actually kind of what probably most people experience is you're inviting this guy to come to a faith study, and right away his reaction is outward reaction is pretty negative or closed or busy. But what we're wanting to do now is good questioning, is empathizing. And what you said is, well, hey, I can relate to that. It sounds a little churchy. Like probably this is brand new to you. Already, chemically what's happening is there's a rapport. There's a connection that's happening already. It feels trust. It feels, and now that opens up to, so, would that be something you'd be interested in? Or, if you have any questions about, what goes on, just ask. Or you might even go like, you've been hearing a lot of stuff here at church. Father talked about Jesus a lot. In the study, we're going to be talking about that.
Mm.
We're going to be talking about that. Now we've kind of it's kind of like searching out what the answers he's actually looking for. Well, one point I was going to, and maybe we can discuss this, is that people often say, well, tell me some good questions. Actually, they're too difficult to answer. To me, it's more have the courage to take interest, and then there's 1,000 different questions.
There was a teacher yesterday, yesterday or the day before, we were getting a session on empathy, and what they were saying is if the listener, like, so I'll call myself the questioner, the listener feels authentically that you care for them and that you're trying to understand them, they'll forgive like misguided questions or whatever, because you're
Exactly.
willing to begin again. And we can say to that, and give a message of encouragement out of that the very fact that you desire to connect and to understand them comes through way louder than the excellent like strategy you used, right? The excellent words, because we talk about keys to successful witnessing when we were younger missionaries, like motivated by love, to invite them closer to Jesus, and like led by the Holy Spirit. I forget the order, but that when those are lined up, like God is aware and he's here and there's an opportunity. And like, do we not believe that he wants to work through us to reach this person by way of connection, invitation, revealing to them an opportunity? Like he desires that, and we can be courageous in these conversations, even if we don't know. But there is, just to highlight, like there will be resistance in us to be like I think that's a no, but it might be an invitation. Okay, I think I heard them say something. I'm going to ask a follow-up question. What did you mean by that? You know?
Yeah, like fundamentally, I mean, in the example of inviting somebody, it's the invitation is actually the win. Their response and their reaction is up to God. But us, like you're saying, caring enough to say, would you be interested? So that's a foundation. The second kind of layer is their reaction, which is what we're talking about, this opportunity to have a conversation. And this is where, like you're saying, psychologically, physiologically, coming alongside to respond to how they respond. And first of all, it makes it not awkward. Like, that's an intimidating thing to invite somebody at first. But you're saying, okay, however they respond, I'm going to come alongside them. Like, I'm not going to be awkward. I'm not going to be weird. I'm not going to think anything of them. I'm going to say, whatever they say, I'm going to say, you know what? I totally get that. Like, I totally get where you're coming from. Busy, you're busy. Like, I'm busy too. I got kids, or yeah, I know it's kind of uncomfortable and it's hard enough to get here on Sunday. You know, that's a huge thing. Or maybe you have issues with the church. Like, you know, I totally get that. That's going to be my disposition in reacting to how I'm going to invite this person.
It disarms. It
Yeah.
allows that next step to happen, because if the obstacle is scheduling or fear, you're kind of dealing with 90% of the resistance by way of connecting with them and disarming some of the common barriers to get them in a study. Or when we're often trying to challenge people to leadership, right? Or to lead studies or to come on missions, or maybe building movements in our parishes, and people, I don't have time. And when we say, I understand, like, I've been there, and here's kind of what I found, and what do you think, and would you pray about that? Those are this is the, I've heard like slogans like the culture of invitation, and it's true. We need to create a culture where we're constantly inviting and leaving room for God to move. But we're suggesting that there's also a dimension of effort and of like awkward that we need to enter into courageously in that invitation.
Yeah, one thing that's really interesting is that, we often get into, we were talking about this at the beginning, we often get shut down by their external, their instant, their reaction, outward reaction. But again, the kind of the studies show if we can get beyond the outward reaction and go to the internal movement, that's where they start actually being honest and being rational. It's not reaction anymore. It's like reflection. And so, for example, this one guy, you're asking, hey, would you like to be in a study? That doesn't just come out of nowhere. You're asking him, would you like to be in a study? Because you've already had previous conversations with him. So you're saying, yeah, I understand. It sounds a little churchy, but how do you feel about, in the study, we're going to actually be talking about the stuff you and I talked about before, like is this something, that, really want to wrestle with who Jesus is? Would that be something that, that you'd be able to take a couple hours? I mean, it's only take a couple hours a week, a couple hours a month. Would it be something you'd be interested in? Now what we've done is gone beyond the reaction. We've almost said, okay, there's no more no. Let's look at the motivation internally. So that's what we want to. We want to kind of get through that window and start zooming into what's inside. That is more. It's not reactionary. It's reflective.
Yeah, and you're meeting the person exactly in a way that your relationship reflects. Meaning, right? If you've had conversations with this person in the past,
Bring
then
those
you
back.
can kind of bring those back. If you haven't, it's like, hey, I see you kind of coming and going at church on the regular. We have a little chat. I actually really like chat with you, and I was wondering, there's something coming up. I'm leading a study, or there's something at the parish that there's a program happening. It'd be really great to get to know each other a bit better. Like, would you want to come along with me and do that? And then you're coming along. So I actually appreciate you, and I give a rip about where you are, and it's authentic. We're not trying to like orchestrate anything. We're not trying to manipulate. It's an authentic desire for them to know Jesus and to know them as a person.
Yeah,
which is at the root of our invitation.
Most people don't just say no. They no, I don't want to do that. But they might say, no, I don't know. I don't think. I don't know if I have the time. And you say, then you want to. Yeah, I get it. We're all kind of busy, but do you think, like, would it be, if it was about like thinking, 5 hours of your time over the next 2 months, do you think you could navigate that?
Yeah.
Already, again, you're getting them. You're not. The no is not the big thing. It's they might say no to that and say, okay, no, I understand, and we might have to kind of continue the conversation or lighten up or maybe move back. But we're always kind of moving in closer and closer to the internal movement that's happening, the honest place.
And I think, something that will drive that or strengthen that, as I'm hearing you, just unpack, is the more that we can, connect with the Lord in prayer and really see ourselves honestly for who we are and where we've come from and identify. We talk all the time about remembering our initial conversion. Like, remember what it feels like to feel awkward at church. Remember what it feels like to wonder what that group of people is up to, or on campus. Like, remember what it felt like to see that there was something happening with the people and you weren't one of them. Like, the more that we can go to those places and remember, the better question askers, will be, the better the more we'll be able to push through when we remember like our own journey and our own conversion. So that's really critical, because how can you, like Eric saying, okay, he quickly went to a place where, okay, I remember what this felt like, and this is, I'll identify and I'll connect. It's so key. And this is where we leave it all up to the Lord. We're like, it's only by his grace that I'm here where I am and that I'm actually able to make these invitations. Like, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Just one
Yeah.
other thing I want to say about this is that, the priest that had that conversation,
Yeah.
he actually, because he was a smart, guy, and he kind of understood, he knew how to relate, he actually knows how to ask questions. But the problem wasn't, did he know how to navigate a conversation by asking questions? He has that ability, that skill. So I can give him little tips on good
Sure.
questions, but he actually knows how. It was more his fear of going there, of asking the question, feeling like, oh, I don't know what to do. Well, the important thing is for us, and I would say the principle is actually, we got to just ask, so tell me a little bit about what he's already said, like, what did you think of that, the homily, or, oh, tell me about your mother, or um, tell me what you think of youth group. As soon as we invite that and then have that disposition of listening, and we're empathizing, we're coming alongside, we've already, we've brought the ball
Yeah.
to the 30-yard line.
Yeah.
Like we're in now in the red zone, and it's just a matter of navigating that.
Even with the more contentious issues in the church,
Exactly.
you're totally right. If somebody, brings that up right away, we're like fight or flight kind of thing. Like, either I know the apologetic, and so I'm gonna dictate it in this way, or I'm not gonna talk about this. You don't talk about religion or politics at the table when you're over at your family's. So it's a fight or flight reaction. Right? But what you're saying is, you're kind of sidestepping the conversation, taking an interest in the person, and asking. Like, one of the classic ways I've heard Angela said it before, the co-founder of CCO. I've heard her say it, that when somebody brings up a contentious issue, she said, "Yeah, that's a really difficult issue. Do you find that affects how you see God?" And right away, like you're saying, you're coming around the side with them. You're looking at this issue together. You're not in a opposed way, and you're actually showing interest for what the person thinks and wants to say. And like you said, there's something psychologically, we want to talk about our opinion on things. And if we're sitting there willing to listen and receive and not bout them.
That's not what's lacking, exactly. We don't lack for a desire to share. We don't lack for a desire to feel seen and known and pursued. Like, that's a strength that's available. It's an energy that's available. And we have like the Lord on our side that desires this person to be connected and walked with. So it really comes down, like you said, to us recognizing the opportunity for what it is, casting out the fear and the misguided no, that we actually called it a no, but it wasn't really a no. And we can see this at every layer of evangelization of the hourglass, like from, these invitations to the deeper challenges to mission, our growth in holiness of an area that like the Lord's really knocking on the door of our heart to kind of order that under his lordship. And there's someone that comes with us and says, we've been there, I want to talk to you, and let's go forward, and let's deal with that. People are waiting for people who will come and deal with these things with them and who will navigate. And this is the opportunity of the missionary age that we're in the church, is that people are waiting for shepherds, like at this level, for their hearts. And it really is like life-changing to have someone come with you into that intimate of a place, invite you, press on with you. Like, that's where the magic happens, right? Of mission. So
we should be defined, the church should be defined not so much about how much judgment it places, or even the message it wants to just pour down upon everyone, the truth, the doctrine, the devotions, which are all great, but we're known for that. We should be actually known for, like Jesus, what do you think? How do you feel? I mean, enter into their world in order, not just, the destination isn't just make them feel comfortable. Actually, destination is radical conversion. But the way we're going to do it is by taking interest in them, not them taking interest in us.
Now, that's the contentious point, I think, in the church about this whole idea of accompaniment, is that the perception is you're accompanying them over there and you might actually fall off a cliff over there. Like, but it's, with, like you said, with the attention and a radical change in thinking, a deep conversion to Jesus Christ and his church.
Yeah.
It's not just meandering along as we go, but there's an intention that they'll come to know Jesus and love him and serve him.
What do you think? Oh, sorry.
As Eric just said that. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind is like as Eric's talking, but people need missionaries who will come with them into their reactions, sort through the emotions, and get to the logic and the thought of what they're living. Like we're co-laboring with the Holy Spirit in these conversations to help them see clearly the invitations before them that are from the Lord, who is ultimately pursuing them, and that work is so necessary. There's confusion. There's the enemy, there's blocks, right? And these conversations and these questions are actually removing, sorting, clarifying, and bringing them to see invitations that are actually already there.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So our goal is to make someone holy, and we could do modes. Sure. We can say, okay, we're going to win an argument to get them to see what I see, or we can win a heart in order for them to see what they need to see.
I love that.
And I think we're inviting them internally where God is, Anyway, amen.
Amen.
We could say so much about this.
We could. And really, this is such an opportunity to get to these places where the potential is unlocked in these spiritual conversations. So we hope that helps you and gives you courage to get out of the awkward and into the heart with the people in your life. Thank you.